far.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear. And today we are sitting with Wade Russell. And Wade, I've known you since you were probably in diapers, just getting out of diapers, I think.
Close.
Yeah, like
there.
14, 13.
Yeah. So wet in the bed.
Yeah. No, we had you on. Obviously, Wade's been on the podcast before, kind of on some of our roundtables and stuff. And I had a couple of people say, you know, who's that Wade? Now, first of all, it was super dark, so that was my bad because I'm a rookie at the whole setting up this whole thing. But so you could hardly see your face. I think you had a hat on one of them, and like
I wore like all black too. So
yeah, you just blended. But no, and I thought about it. I'm like, man, you have a really cool kind of hockey story, especially for young players that are playing minor hockey. And maybe not, want to stay in hockey, but not sure what they want to do long term. And not that anybody has to know what they want to do long term, but I'm going to assume when you were 12, 13, 14, your goals probably and dreams probably to play in the NHL, right? Yep. And I think there's other ways to get there than just playing, and for you, I guess we'll start off kind of quickly at the beginning, but just kind of going through quick. But starting hockey, I know your dad was into a little bit. You have a brother as well. Now, did you guys start at young ages? You guys get right into it at, kind of that 3-4, like most good Canadian boys?
Yeah. So it was pretty quick right away. My dad had just played a little bit growing up. I think he played like a little bit of high school and rep towards the end. He didn't have much of an opportunity when he was younger. But when I started, I would have been, I think, in skates at 3. Like just put him on, kind of wheeling around at the odd free skate. And then I think I started playing my first organized hockey at 4 or 5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Brother never really took to it. Parents did a good job trying to get him into it. And he was big into stuff like birds. So they got him a Penguins hat, just hoping that would kind of get him into it and everything. And it never really stuck. But he's pretty successful in his career too. So
yeah.
So I can't complain about that. But yeah.
And then minor hockey, obviously played minor hockey. And then when did you kind of take that jump into AA and AAA and kind of that more competitive?
Yeah, so I actually started minor hockey with West London, just house league, just kind of getting into it. Didn't really know anybody. Parents didn't know anybody in it, just kind of throwing you into it. And then I had to follow one of my best friends to Red Circle.
Nice.
Which my dad wasn't too.
Eric Lindros, for anybody out there who doesn't know this, Eric Lindros played in Red Circle. That's one of their big claim to fame.
Yeah. And I'm right there behind him, number 2.
Yeah.
But no, so I went to Red Circle, played there a year, had fun. Like we were named the Yu-Gi-Ohs. Like it was. Looking back, it was pretty embarrassing, but then I went back to West London and then played 3 years there, and we had like a really good team. This was when you kind of almost had AAA teams at the A level because you couldn't really play AAA. And it was 4 cities, so it was only Oak Ridge North, LMHA West, and then I think maybe SSE Wild was around then, and it was you played out of each other every other game.
Right.
So you actually had some rivalries, and some of the guys growing up that I played against were all around their leagues. Your Tadasichuks, your Brosnans. Yeah. We were all battling kind of every time. And then I went to AA for 1 year in minor Pee Wee, and then I got cut back down to A in major Pee Wee. And then after that, went back to double. Then I made AAA green because we had the 2 team split there.
That's right.
Major Bantam, and then I made the green team or the gold team is what it was called in grade 10 in minor midget.
So really like playing AAA kind of Bantam midget basically, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, but true. Like I would consider true AAA like my last year when I was 16.
Yeah.
Because the green team. The coaches did everything they could, but it was a bit of an oversight to think that we could add 2 teams at that level. Like we didn't have enough talent to compete. We didn't win a game. Yeah. I remember we almost threw our gloves when we tied in like the second last game of the year. So it was a good experience to play against those people. Like I do think, or against at that level, I think it helped the following year and really trying to make a push to make the AAA team. But it was an interesting year for sure.
It's one of those things though. I think when so for anyone not familiar with this, basically what happened was London tried to double up their AAA team, which we have enough population to do that, no doubt. But they just kind of knee jerked it and did midget right down to Atom, all 2 AAA teams, which is fine. But they didn't stick with it long enough to actually see it develop. And I think if you're going to do that, or you're going to actually double your high end level of hockey, you got to start at the young ages. Like that starts at like novice and Atom. So novice aren't going to play travel, but getting them, obviously getting good skill development at that age. And then in Atom, starting to really develop those kids at 2 have double the amount of kids playing AAA, which we saw it when they did do it. You had one team that was stacked, which was fine. And then a second team, but the second team was probably realistically a AA team. But if you worked at that for a couple of years, now your Atoms go to Pee Wee and and now I guess it's U8s, U10s and stuff, but
Yep.
but they start moving up in ages. Then by the time they do get to that minor midget, that draft year, they're going to be good. Like you're going to have, instead of just having 16 or 15 kids that are AAA, you could easily have 30 that are
For sure.
good and two kind of parity. You're still always going to have your high end kids, obviously, but you could definitely help develop more kids. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen earlier and they didn't stick with it, but it's something that maybe one day it'll get revisited. Who knows? Or now I think how things are going now, you see a lot of more independent stuff popping up with outlaw leagues and different things like this that are kind of popping up for kids to play, But then following midget, obviously everyone's goal is to get drafted and you're going through that as well. When did you start to kind of realize, that I may get drafted, I may not, or, and kind of like, I guess for a lot of young kids that are playing, you played with some really, some players that you knew for sure were going to get drafted. So you had buddies that I guarantee they're going to get drafted. Where did you sit in that whole thing? Like kind of going through it? I think everybody, myself included, way back in the day, we all kind of were hoping.
Yep.
Right. But where did you kind of sit in that whole?
Yeah. So it was interesting going through that kind of midget year. We had a couple of guys on the team that had kind of been talked about and were some names that you were kind of expecting to go. We also that year, that was when a lot of players left and went to the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So quite honestly, like the reason I probably made the team was because that kind of annex of players. Like I probably wouldn't have made it. I went into the tryouts as a forward. And then just to kind of give a bit of backstory, I'll get back to kind of where I thought I was draft wise and all that. But it was like the second last tryout and it was still 2 teams that year. So I was on the team with what I would consider to be the weaker players. We had the 2 best goalies.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other team was incredibly strong players with the 2 weakest goalies.
Gotcha.
Basically at that point, they were trying to sort out what goalies that they were going to pick. And they put a team together that was going to pepper this set because they didn't have a ton of strong forwards on our team.
Gotcha.
So I reached out to the coach, who was actually Rob Simpson at the time. And basically just said I had applied as forward to D because I had been doing a little bit of kind of split duty at that point, just here and there playing. And he said, is there any chance I could just get one look at D? So I got one game against Waterloo, thought I played pretty well. They were hurting more for defense at the time, especially because of all those players that went to the Chiefs. So I made it actually the team as a defenseman. Simmer called me and he says, if you play forward, you're going to be on the green team. And if you play defense, you're going to be on the gold team. Which one do you pick?
Right.
So I scratched my chin for about half a second. And I said, well, I'm going to play on the gold team as a defenseman. So then the year went on. We weren't a very strong team. I think when he was on the podcast with you in the past, he actually said that we were probably the hardest team that worked for him out of all the teams that he had, because he had some pretty talented teams. So I think we worked really hard. We really invested in the office. We hung on every single word that he said. He had a bit of a story coming in. He had some good teams and whatnot and knew you a little bit. And he came in with, I remember always talking about the big binder that he had. And like, that was some big things.
The Bible, hockey Bible.
Exactly. So we worked pretty hard. As far as the draft that year, it was always hard to gauge just because me and my family, especially, I thought my parents did a good job not being too nosy and really prying with stuff. But at the same time, we didn't really know. Like I didn't have an older brother that ever went through it. We didn't have a family friend that really went through it. So it was hard to really ever gauge whether should we be expecting anything, should we not. I never really heard from any teams. There'd be the odd scout that after a game just says, hey, who are your parents? They want to see how big they are and just kind of see if there's going to be some frame there to work with or whatever. But I never really, if I'm being honest, like I never really felt that I was going to go. I definitely, and when the 13th, 14th, 15th round started rolling around, like just watching like, oh, maybe somebody will take a flyer or whatever. But I never felt that I was going to go. And at this point too, I was starting to get really involved with the LEAP program in high school, which was kind of important for me as looking back on it, especially now, is I really did start to kind of get into the coaching. I was starting with you a little bit. And I honestly, maybe not in minor, like minor was still OHL draft, want to play. But I was at this point starting to shift to, I was already starting to kind of prepare that I'm never going to make it as a hockey player. Like I'm not going to play and make money playing hockey. Like probably going to play maybe some B. Could I push to play some CIS? Great. But I was already kind of starting to change, I think, my expectations around then. Definitely in major midget is when they really started to shift. But I think it started just kind of seeing the more opportunity, what you were doing and the success you were having with your company, kind of seeing what Simmer was doing as a coach and whatnot. So I don't really think that I thought I was going to go. And I was starting to kind of already change what I was doing, not for a lack of trying or even being discouraged. I just, for whatever reason, my passion kind of switched from playing to kind of what could I do after I played. So
yeah, no, and I think it's interesting, and I think we always bust your chops about being like an old soul and stuff, and that's, to me, that's a good thing. But it's also, I think parenting is a big part of that, obviously, and just the type of guy that you are. But I think for a lot of kids, being realistic, man, push hockey as far as you can. If you get a chance to go play school or go play junior or do whatever, that's unbelievable. But realistically, are you going to make millions of dollars playing hockey, maybe, but maybe not, right? And if I don't, well, then what are some fallback plans, right? And I know that you were kind of back in the day, like a student, like a player that came to our camps and stuff and got to know you really well. I got to know your parents and got to know that whole age group. And then, as you kind of got older, this is kind of, I'm saying this more for young kids out there, but if you are in a community where there is hockey schools, or maybe there's an off-ice training facility, and you love that stuff and you love doing it yourself, think about maybe being a teacher at one point. Because I know I started teaching when I was like 14, 15. I was helping out on the ice, and then I started taking over little programs up in Sudbury at like 18 for the city, running power skating, things like that. And I had a pretty sick job, whenever I was home, to teach hockey and teach skating and stuff. And that kind of got me into what I was doing now, obviously. But I think having that, as a young guy, and even for parents out there, man, bring them to that facility, get to know the people that are coaching there, get to know the owners maybe. And, my son would, and get your son or your daughter to I know you came to us and said, hey, like, there'd ever be a chance to work here. Like, 100%, man. Our stuff. You've done a bunch of our stuff. Like, started as a helper. And I mean, now, look forward a couple of years later, you're running most of our programs and doing a bunch of stuff like that. And for you, we'll get into this in a sec, but as a student right now at school, kind of going through university, you've always had money in your pocket. You've always had a job. You've always had your own vehicles, and just because you work.
Yeah.
And
that's how the job kind of started. You guys were kind of asking me to maybe take on a little bit more as I was starting out at 14, 15, 16 in high school there. And obviously the big thing in high school is you want to get a car. So it was kind of funny the way it worked out is you guys wanted me to work more, but truly in order to be able to work for you more, I needed a car. Cause at this point I was getting parents and getting shuttled around, and the way that their schedules kind of worked at that point, it didn't really jive well with being able to do as much as you wanted, which I also wanted to do. I wanted to take on more, wanted to make a bit more money. So I basically, for the first little while, then it was perfect. I was basically making just enough to make my biweekly payment on my car. So I'd make my $120 or whatever it was over 2 weeks, and then I would put it right into the car. But I mean, I was in high school. I was the only kid with a car. Like it was awesome the way it worked out. But, and to your point about getting back to what you were saying a moment ago, I was thinking, forgetting what you were saying there. You were talking about teaching, and one thing I would recommend all players, not even just for having a job, but I would think that I would have been a better player if I even started teaching a little bit earlier. Not making a jump. Like I played a little bit of B. I'm not saying I would have played in the O, but I probably would have been a much better junior B player, maybe squeezed a little bit more out of that. Like the way I think about the game now, and I'm older too, and a little bit more mature and this, that, and the other thing. But when I started teaching, everything started to kind of click a little bit more, and just little things that you never would have really thought about or picked up on. I think it makes a huge difference for a young player.
I agree. And I think it's important for young kids to even get out with, let's say you're 14, 15, go on the ice with 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds and realize how frustrating it is at times when they're not listening to you, or when they're hitting pucks and you don't want them to, or they don't understand what you're saying. So you got to figure out how to teach it to them, whether you got to show them, or you got to grab their stick and show them what you want them to do, or grab their feet, I think, and to your point, I know for me, when I really started getting into teaching, and you're not the first guy to tell me this or girl to tell me this, that they became a better skater when they started teaching skating, because you're more aware of it and you're thinking about all those teaching points that you're telling kids. Now, when you're skating, you're like, you got the little voice in your head telling you like, snap your toe. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I agree. I think it's beneficial for kids to get into some sort of mentorship as a young kid, right? Whether it's helping a young cousin or a young brother or whoever it is. And I put that on the parents a little bit to help these young kids navigate into seeking something like that out. It could be Boys and Girls Club, could be whatever, volunteering at elementary school, or doesn't really matter what it is, but getting in front of these young little kids and learning how to like deal with them a little bit, because it is, it's an eye opener for sure.
Yeah. Like that's actually a great point. It actually kind of brought up, like, I think now, if I think back to like what my first mentoring would have been, I actually remember, so where I lived, just the West End, Westmount, went to St. Jude's Elementary School. We had quite a Colombian population, often immigrating and kind of living in that area. So I can still remember their names, but I would teach and help the ESL students, because they kind of had these cool workbooks that was a little bit of a mix of pictures and just kind of introducing them to the language, right? Spanish to English and whatnot. So I spent quite some time kind of helping them through that. So that point though, just about helping your peers and being put in mentorship opportunities, I think it does a lot as an athlete, but also just personal development, a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more kind of thoughtful and self-aware and stuff. So
now, did your English get better when you were doing that?
Probably not. Probably got worse. My Spanish got better though. But they were probably teaching me the wrong things, so I shouldn't be saying them right now.
Every swear word in Spanish. Yeah. Those are usually the only ones that stick, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's funny. I'm from Sudbury, so very French up there, and went to French school. I'm bilingual, but you don't speak French for a long time. And now my young kids are going to French school. So I'm reading French books and stuff. And my French is actually getting better just because I'm reading. They're all like, I can only speak in like little baby tones now or little like kid tones, and not big words.
Yeah.
But it is cool. Like when you get back into, again, going back to teaching or going back to whatever you're doing, it's the more you get into it. And obviously when you look at it in different angles, just like, I think it's important for young kids to ref, ref ball hockey tournaments 100%. Or ref, like try to get into reffing, good source of money. But man, I reffed through college and I stopped yelling at referees. It's like, 100%. Man, I mess up all the time. I got coaches yelling at me. I'm 21 years old. Like, and it changes your view on a referee. Not to say you're not going to get into it with the ref every once in a while, even if you are a referee, but you get like, they're human. They're going to mess up. They're going to miss an offside. They're going to miss a penalty call. You're going to get a cheesy call against you, whatever. But it does change your whole outlook on the game. Like it changes how you approach the game, even on that side of it.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Get parents to ref too.
That would be huge.
Big battle.
That would be huge.
Could you imagine if at the minor level, they made you ref one game, like they put you in the box to time keep and stuff?
It'd be unbelievable.
They made a parent ref one single
or
game.
even get them to coach, just go on the bench for a period and see how it is not that easy to coach.
For sure.
I mean, you take it for granted when you've done it for a while, but as a parent in the stands yelling because his kid's not getting on the ice enough, we'll go down around the bench and see how you missing a kid by accident, not on purpose, or kids messing up every second shift. You got to sit them a little bit, or it's definitely definitely an eye opener for sure. But then going back to kind of what happened, so with the draft and stuff like that, didn't happen.
Yep.
Or didn't happen for you. Yep. But and then following that, kind of so now, you don't get drafted, which you kind of set your expectations. I think, like most kids hopefully do the right way. Many kids don't. They have higher expectations than they think, and they get really disappointed. But moving forward on that, what was it like for you? And what was it like for you going through it with a lot of your buddies getting drafted and you're not drafted? I know there's probably texts going around saying, hey, congrats and stuff, but did it, did it eat you up inside a little bit? Or were you like, man, I'm kind of looking forward to the future. I'm moving on.
Yeah. The one thing I think is I always had a good network. Like parents were great. They were super supportive. If you get drafted, great. We'll do everything we can to help you. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Keep doing whatever you love. And if I ever at one point ever wanted to quit hockey cold turkey, they would have supported me to go do whatever it is that came afterwards. So I always had that network. And then I had you as well, which you understood kind of the hockey a little bit more, even more so than my parents, especially the inner workings of it all, because there's a lot more to it than just whether you get picked or not, as you know. So that really helped in just kind of managing expectations. But definitely, I know I struggled because I was training. Like it wasn't like I was just hoping to make it. Like I was putting in quite a bit of effort. My parents did an incredible job of providing me those opportunities. And I the hockey world can be cruel sometimes. And I had some buddies kind of chirping me like, why are you working so hard? You're never going to do this. You're never going to do that. So the last laugh is from those teams and whatnot. I'm the only guy still working in the sport at all. Yeah. So who's laughing now?
And you were jacked.
Yeah. I'm going to send it all out to them, this podcast, when it comes up.
Definitely.
But no, so I was putting in effort. So that kind of, I struggled with it a little bit, but again, I always had a good network where I could bounce ideas or what I was feeling off people. And they would just be like, don't worry about them. It's going to turn out. As far as my expectations, I really just wanted to play junior B and just make it. Like I remember playing on some of those A teams, and I was the kid that was never going to play after minor hockey. Like I was just, I was that bubble kid, like good enough, but not quite good enough. And then I ended up making B, which was awesome. I was having a great time, got traded. Like it was good. Like I got everything out of it that I really did want to get.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's one of those things. I went through this through my career, and I didn't get drafted, and I ended up, was fortunate, got a scholarship, and then played some pro, and it was unbelievable. But I look back, and I'm just from what you said there, like I'm very happy with what I did with hockey. Yeah. Would I love to play longer? Sure. Would I love to play in the AHL or the NHL? Yes. But I look back on it, I'm like, I look at my frame, my body, the style of game that it was back then with the clutching and the grabbing, kind of a bigger guy's game. I think I squeezed a lot of ounces of hockey out of my body. So for me, I'm like, I'm happy with what I've done. And I was really excited to move forward on when I was done playing. Not that I was excited to be done playing, but I was excited to like, what's the next chapter basically, and now I've been very fortunate to be involved in hockey, be around guys like you and watch you kind of grow into, a young bearded young man.
The beard's been around for a while.
Yeah. Since like 13.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of the new buzz for me. That's the new hype for me. I love working with young players and seeing them mature into older players. I love working with young junior guys that are going to get a chance to maybe one day play in the NHL and achieve their goals and their dreams and stuff like that. And I think for you as well, like, you know, not that you squeeze every ounce, but you played junior B, you've won, you've had some fun, you met a lot of people. And, you know, you look back at, I think on your playing and stuff and be like, man, like I did okay, you know, and especially when you think back on those A teams and those house league teams, like I wasn't the best player on that team.
Yeah, no, I really can't complain. Like I got a lot of different opportunities. Even just making the London Nationals was a big deal, especially they had some pretty good teams at the time. They were coming off Sutherland Cup win there. And it was a team that I probably wasn't supposed to make. I walked on with a bunch of buddies, which was also cool. A lot of us from CCH and whatnot made the team. So we kind of had our little row of stalls there together, but one by one, they started disappearing. And then again, I was the last one kind of that stuck with the roster and whatnot. Got coached by the late Kelly Thompson, which was awesome. Like I was only there, I think, 17 games till about Christmas that I actually dressed for or whatnot, but I learned like a lot under him, just about what real kind of practices get to 5-on-5 controlled. And not that anybody needs to know what that is or whatever, but it's just all the experiences that I've got, like so many people that I've kind of got to meet through hockey. And now I get to go kind of share those things that I learned with kind of the next players and all the people around me is pretty cool. Yeah.
And Kelly was I know it's kind of a bit of a tough story as far as, you know, he's a young man who passed away and, but he was a young coach, which is kind of fun, right? Yeah. Like for a young guy coming in junior, you got a young guy who's not far removed from the game, still jumps into drills and practice, I'm sure. Yeah. And, you know, any kind of fun stories with him and just because I know he was an intense guy when he played. He would do anything for a team, good teammate. He'd fight, he'd go to the net, he'd block shots. You know what I mean? He kind of did it all. What was he like as a coach?
He was good. Like the one thing I always really liked and really respect about him is he as a head coach, like you're the one that's making the lineup decisions, right? So when a guy usually has a gripe with a coach, it's usually the head coach. The assistants are generally there kind of patting you on the back and they're a little bit more hands-on. Whereas at the end of the day, the guy that kind of wears it from the player's perspective is the head coach.
Sure.
You're either happy with him if you're getting a lot of ice or you're not. The one thing I always thought he did a really good job is kind of coming up to you at a time where you're probably maybe not getting as much ice as you'd like or whether you thought or whatever. And he would just sit and talk with you. Like I remember being in Sarnia and had a bit of a tough game, like turnovers early, didn't get much ice time. Ended up just sitting the rest of the game, which was totally be expected for my play and what was expected of me and the age that I was at. I was young, still learning. Like that was a good learning experience. But right away at the bus, like we were kind of parked right up against the building and he just pulled me aside and had a chat with me, told me a story about him with the Knights and kind of how he was going through the same stuff and just stick with it and whatever. And so he was awesome.
That's
and then
great.
My other favorite story was I ended up getting traded to St. Thomas that year. Respectfully declined and ended up playing some high school with some good buddies, some childhood friends. The one that I actually followed to Red Circle, going back to that, he was on that team. So it was the same first time that we'd ever played hockey together again since those two points in time. But anyways, we won the city championship that year. And I got off the ice and whatever, pulled out the phone. And then there was a tweet from Kelly Thompson. And I'd only played half a season for him, barely knew him at that point. But he kind of just congratulated me and said that he loved seeing like a player like myself who works hard, plays forward and D, like kind of does everything. He loves seeing a player like me kind of win a championship. He remembers when he won his and just enjoy the night and all that. So that was pretty cool. I still have it saved on my phone. But that was cool. A pretty cool thing from him. So
that's really cool. Even anytime a coach, even like, and you've gone through it a bunch where someone just reaches out randomly, right? And hey, how you doing? And I think for any coaches out there or parents out there that have dealt with kids, like you always have those couple kids that you really liked or that are doing really well. And every once in a while, just saying, hey, how you doing? Thinking that goes a long way, especially for young guys and girls out there. You know what I mean? And especially when you have coaches that have maybe impacted you. And even though it's a short period of time, like you said, half season, but he still has kind of some lasting memories with you, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And it meant a lot too, just because traditionally quitting junior B to play high school isn't the easiest decision. It's not like the most popular one. It was kind of looked at a little bit weirdly, but for him just to reach out and basically pat me on the back saying like what you're doing, if it's making you happy, basically in a roundabout way, then keep doing it was pretty cool to hear from him. So
that's another thing too, though, a big struggle with a lot of kids with high school sports or high school hockey in particular, because we're talking about hockey. But you know, because in our area, you can't play junior and play high school hockey. So some kids make the decision that, you know what, I'm not going to play junior this year. I'm going to play high school hockey, kind of like you did. But I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it depends on the player, right? Like for you, you're a social guy, you're in a cool program at kind of a leadership program at school. It's fun to play in games that are packed when they have sellout games and kids can buy their way to the game and miss school a bit. Like it's pretty cool to be part of that environment too. And I think for parents out there, a lot of times the parents are like, no way, you're not playing high school. I don't want you to get hurt. You're not, you know, but I mean, if we think back for me as an older gentleman, when I think back on high school for me, like I love playing high school sports. I loved being part of that school atmosphere, that, you know, having people watching, having girls in the stands and buddies in the stands watching you. And I think, for you going to do that, that's just another kind of chapter in kind of what you did. But I mean, pretty cool experience to be able to play for your school and have some fun with some boys that you haven't played with in a while for sure.
Yeah. And we had some good teams too. Like we had a couple good runs. We went down and we would play in offs and that, which was a big deal. And there was always the talk of if you make it to the finals, they shuttle in your whole school to kind of come watch and whatnot.
Cool.
We never ended up making it there, but even just those tournaments, because when you play minor hockey tournaments, you get your weekend, you kind of bang it out. You're in the hotel a little bit, but when you go to offs and major midget provincials are the same way as well. But you spend a whole week
It's
together.
long, right?
And you play one game a day.
Cool,
you get up, you do your little study time together, which
Yeah.
isn't study time. You're just kind of hanging out,
Yeah.
shooting stuff around. But it's a different experience. You really kind of get to bond, right? And I get why the minor hockey schedule is the way it is, but you don't really ever bond. You're just constantly going through it. It's like a fast track. Whereas when you start getting those opportunities in major, midget, and high school and whatnot, you really kind of get to gel with your group. So that was always really cool. And then also, and we touched on this, I think, in the round table with Maxi there around Christmas, maybe the one before. I was a player, mid-tier player. I wouldn't say I lacked confidence, but I wouldn't say that I was necessarily exuding it, especially with play. Like I was never that kid that was a minute left down by one. I wasn't going over the boards. And I understood that. Like I was fine with my role. But in high school, when you're that grade 13, you don't really have a choice. You're that guy, whether you have the skill set or not, right? You've earned that right. You're a little bit more of a veteran player. So I learned a lot like there just about kind of how to handle the pressure, to want those moments. Because for a while, when you don't really get those opportunities, you're kind of not maybe convinced, but you don't know how to handle it. You go over the boards and you're like, I'm not ready. Whereas other guys have been doing it for so long, they just go and they try to create and try to tie the game up or whatever the situation may be. But I learned a lot. Like I was out there diving around, blocking shots, like putting my body on the line. So it was a good opportunity for me in my situation to learn kind of those different elements to it. Cause I was never that top tier guy that was always expected that of.
Yeah. And the confidence thing is a huge, huge thing. And some of it comes with age, obviously. And some kids just have it. Some kids just have that.
100%.
Give me the puck or give me the ball. I'll finish this off, And I was similar to you. I sometimes I'd be like, what am I doing out here? Like, where do I go? What am I doing? And you're overthinking it basically, right? We all kind of know what to do, and it's a confidence thing 100%. And sometimes that can get pulled out of you with good coaching and people that, believe in you. Could be your friend group or your parent group. That's just, kind of helps that out. But I think a lot of times players have to figure it out for themselves a little bit too, where they start getting a little more confidence. Their shot feels better, their ski, whatever that is. Right. And then, so I think I think that's an important thing for young players. It's okay. It's okay to have those weird thoughts in your head where you're not that good or, you know what I mean? But how do you get rid of those? How do you kind of replace those with more positive thoughts in order to gain more confidence, And I think as you get better and you got older and you got better, you were more of a guy that other younger guys were probably looking up to. You kind of naturally just, gain a little bit of that confidence, right?
Yeah. And I don't this isn't a sales pitch for high school. Like there's some kids that shouldn't play high school. Like they really are the great skill set. Like they're going to do great things. It's not worth the risk of getting injury or the extra ice. Like their body probably doesn't need any more kind of exercise and things like that. It's more just, you can find different little pockets. Confidence for everybody comes in different shapes and sizes. For some guys, it might be getting in the gym, getting a little bit more weight on them. So the battle in the corner, they feel a little bit stronger. Others, it might be doing a little bit more time with the checking clinic, right? Just getting a little bit more comfortable kind of battling and stuff. So I don't think it has to be just high school, but just in general, being aware that it's okay to lack confidence in some areas, but just make sure that if you know that you lack it, then you're already pretty self-aware. It's just kind of having the initiative to take the next step to kind of, what can I do to maybe, like you said, kind of flip it a little bit, kind of replace the lack of confidence maybe with a little bit more confidence in that area. So,
and I think if any any parent out there's got young kids that maybe are lacking a little bit of confidence, but I think you said some really good things I want to hit on, but how can you help your young player get more confidence? Well, there's a couple easy ways just in, let's say, hockey, but doing a private lesson with a really good skills coach. And that, they're going to get better at their skills, but now you got a one-on-one for a half hour or an hour with hopefully a real good person that's talking to your son or daughter and helping them and giving them some positive feedback. And that to me just, helps with confidence a ton. But getting them in the gym maybe at 13, 14, 15, but just getting stronger. I mean, how much more confidence do you have when you knew that you were getting stronger and you had pecs a little bit, and you had 100%. Arms a little bit, right? You just got a little bit more confidence, or get them into jiu-jitsu or get them into karate or boxing or something not that they're going to go out and fight, but now they know if they grab a guy there or grab a girl, they're confident, right? Like, but all those little things I think help kids get more confident, right? And at the end of the day, when you're good at something, for the most part, you're going to be a little more confident with it. So if you're getting better at hockey or you're getting better at basketball, you're going to be a little bit more confident in your play and what you're doing on the court or what you're doing on the ice sheet, right? So I think for parents, it's important to we got to help our kids figure out how to gain confidence, because it's a game changer. You see it even at the NHL level.
Yep.
when guys are slumping, you usually you start peeling back the layers on it, and they're second guessing things. They're changing their
100%.
tape job. They're trying everything to try to get out of it. But at the end of the day, a lot of it comes back to just not having confidence.
Yeah, and you hear it all the time. Like, I don't necessarily like the word swagger, but it's true. Like, all the guys that I played with that went on, they just had that little bit of swagger. Like Bo Horvat, I remember his dad would always say, "Look good, feel good, play good." Like, just about how you get dressed and you go to the rink. Like, these little kind of cues or whatever. But he was, and I'm sure if you asked him internally, he had some doubts at certain times and whatnot. But just outwardly and to his peers and to his coaches, he wasn't cocky. Like, he was never talking about his stats. If he said, "Hey, how are you doing in hockey?" the first thing out of his mouth wasn't a stat line. It was, "Oh, we're working hard. We could be a little bit better." Like, it made a lot of sense. But he was always confident. Like, he just had that kind of aura about him, whatever you want to call it, swagger, right? But it definitely makes a huge difference. And the $1 million question is really how you get it. I think everybody's different. But like you said, I think it starts with asking yourself that question, kind of consulting the people around you, your network of people, whether it's your skills coach, your strength coach, your parents, mom, dad, whoever, hockey coach, can be anybody, somebody that you trust. But it can be, I think, definitely improved. It's hard to make it tangible what exactly it is for everybody. Everybody's different. But I definitely think that's a major step and be kind of going to the next level, whether that's from House League to A, or whether it's from AAA to Junior B, or whether it's from the OHL to NHL, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. So then following kind of junior hockey and stuff, you end up, playing a bit of Junior B, playing a bit of Junior C, and obviously had a good run, had some fun with it, and played. And then during that time, started at Western and started, going to school at Western. What was that transition like, as far as knowing that hockey was going to kind of be secondary now, and it was probably one of the main things in your life for your whole life, and then knowing, okay, now I'm going to go to school. And like everybody, the fear, not the fear, but the ladder, the next rung on the ladder is going to school, getting a job, getting a mortgage, getting a wife, getting a whatever, right? Life. Yeah. And you slow played it a little bit, which I think was a smart move.
Still slow playing.
Yeah. No, but I mean, what was that transition like for you, as far as going from hockey and then saying, you know what, I'm going to have hockey. I'm going to have fun, man. I'm going to play my last year or two. I'm going to have some fun with it. I'm going to concentrate more on school and work a little bit. And, what was that kind of headspace like for you going through that?
Yeah. So at this point, I was, like I kind of alluded to, my perspective was always changing. I knew I definitely wanted to stay in the sport of hockey. And I knew that the best way to do that was probably something away from the playing aspect. So, and going back to the LEAP program at CCH, Wendy Glover there, and a lot of the teachers, and my parents especially as well, it was never plan B, but it was just two plan A's is the way that I've always looked at it. Plan A is to play in the NHL, but plan A is also just to kind of keep building a resume, and what that resume is, whether that's playing experience. That was a big thing really for me, was with Junior B and really trying to push however much I could play, was I just wanted to be able to say I played a little bit. I know it's not the most incredible place to play, but just to have as much experience there, so that when I came out and I wanted to get into coaching or skills or whatever, I at least had a little bit of something, a little bit of paperwork to kind of fall back on. Not that that's a make or break for anybody in the industry or anything. I think there's a lot more that goes into it, but that was kind of my thought process with playing at that point. As far as school goes, I was always an okay student. My parents were pretty good at kind of pushing and saying, make sure you work hard in school, but it wasn't also the be all and end all. I wasn't, forced to do homework night in and night out. It was kind of a little bit more lax that way. But for me, going back to kind of the resume now, I was just starting to look at, okay, what can I pursue that when I finally do decide to stop playing, whether that's tomorrow, whether that's in 10 years, what can I maybe start to work towards that's going to allow me to kind of continue to work in hockey? I didn't necessarily know what in hockey yet at that point. I was definitely starting to get a little bit more really at this point with you working downstairs in the training center, a little bit more responsibility there. So I would say the first thing I started to latch onto was a little bit more of that skill development kind of hockey company camps and stuff. So I enrolled in, or I applied for the kinesiology program at Western. I actually didn't get in right away. So kind of the story of it's a kind of,
you got to grind it out. You got to grind it out.
And again, like I really do think, I really do think, based on like my playing experience, like I was well equipped for that. I brushed off water off a duck's back, and I went to Kings, did a couple of years there, and then I actually finally got into the program. That's why it's taken me so long, and I'm just kind of finally tidying it all up right now. But to turn two negatives into a positive, now I come away with a double minor in psych and social on top of my sport management degree. Yeah. Because that's what I kind of started chipping away at there at the beginning. So for me, it was just trying to check off as many boxes as I could, so that whenever I stopped playing and really wanted to start to kind of really work in the sport industry, specifically in hockey, that I was doing everything I could, that whoever was hiring me, whether it was you, whether it was somebody else, they couldn't look at it and be like, well, he hasn't really done anything. But I really wanted to build a good resume and just experiences, because I think that's the biggest thing.
100%. And I think that goes a lot further sometimes than having a bunch of different certifications and coaching level 1, coaching level 2, coaching level 3. Because I met a lot of coaches along the way that have level 4 coaching and they're not good coaches. And it's just, I think, and I've also met ex-players that have played in the NHL that are now coaching that aren't good coaches. They have a hard time relating. They have a hard time, teaching. And I've met a lot of people that didn't play a high level of hockey and are great coaches, and you see it all over the place in any industry. Right. But I think one thing that I think we should highlight a little bit is, the fact that even when you were younger, you started kind of helping out with some AAA teams on the coaching side of it a little bit and kind of, being a second assistant type thing and getting your feet wet that way, seeing the backside of the hockey instead of being on the ice, but being on the bench, which I think is another eye opener for a lot of people. And again, gives you a little bit more experience in doing stuff. Obviously, taking on a way bigger role in skill development and program design and working with young kids and all that kind of stuff, which again is huge. You can go on the ice with one player or 25 and be able to run unreal sessions, which a lot of people can't do that. So I think to your point, building up your resume and trying to do as much as you can. And I remember talking to you a little bit about school, and obviously I was supportive on you finishing whenever you want to finish. And if you want to take full course loads, do that. And I remember you saying, well, I don't mind taking a little bit of a lesser load and taking an extra year or half a year to finish. And then I can work more and I can do other things, which I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure on students to finish up, like get done. Yeah. But then you're 23, 24 and you're done school. Now what? Right. So if you want to take a little bit extra because you are working or you have a co-op opportunity or you have other opportunities to gain life experiences, I think that's, to me, that's huge. And I think it's better sometimes than the actual degree that you're going to get. I know you need the piece of paper for the most part, and you're 14 years into your degree, so you might as well finish it up, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I might stay for a little bit more. I'm not sure. But yeah. And the other thing too is, again, going back to this network of people that I had, it was always, you hear so much now about people coming out with these degrees and really good degrees, high end, good institutions, stuff like that. But they don't have any They don't have any work experience in the actual industry. And so they're having a hard time getting into entry level jobs because for whatever reason, a lot of entry level jobs require already 5 years in the industry, even though it's an entry level job. So there's a lot of people kind of hitting their head against the wall, just trying to get in there and they can't break in. So for me, it was definitely get an education. But like you said, like I have no problem building a bit more of the work experience if it means that the education takes a little bit longer to kind of actually complete. Just because now when I step out of it here in the spring with my undergrad, I'll have been working here for about 8 years. Yeah. Right. And don't get me wrong, those 8 years weren't the same as this last year's been in terms of responsibility and whatnot. But I remember like it started out on Tuesday nights just pushing pucks with you. Yeah. And it was just for Tuesday night, 6 to 9 p.m. preseason power skating. Yeah. And then it would just be hanging out in the room with you. You talking about the old soul and stuff, like hanging out in the room. There'd be a couple older guys. I wasn't allowed to stick around for as long as I probably am now, but I'd try to wait it out and stay in there as long as I could. And then eventually you'd be like, all right, we're going to shower now or whatever. And then I would leave or whatever. So it's just, I've been around it or been around really good people for quite some time now that I just feel a little bit more comfortable with kind of what I can maybe pursue afterwards. So that was always a big thing for me was coupling the real world experience with, the books and the little bit more of the kind of science behind everything. And that kind of goes back to high school and that LEAP program. And because that really started to blend the two and seeing the value in that. So, and that's another thing too, that I know a lot of the kids in our area try to, especially a lot of the athletes that are maybe a little bit, have some leadership skills and stuff, or kind of go to that program. It's called LEAP. And Wendy Glover does a really, really good job with that whole program, but it's a really good, I guess, getting more tools in your toolbox, for lack of better terms, but basically it equips you with setting up program stuff, doing stuff with young kids, mentorship programs. Like it's unreal. And for anybody in any area, but looking at high schools rather than just going to the high school in your block, or sometimes you have to, but looking at what kind of programs these high schools have, because I think nowadays, compared to when I was young, the high schools are way differently set up. Like they're more specific in high school A is more specific into arts and drama. So high school B is more specific into sports and leadership and rec. And high school C is more into, the engineering and the hands-on mechanics. Like, but looking at what you want to do and maybe go to one of those schools that's more kind of your style or maybe what you think that you want to do when you're older. And I think that obviously helps set you up for even building more relationships, getting to know more people. Wendy's well connected. So obviously probably met a ton of people through her. And then moving forward to kind of what you're at now. So you're finishing up your last year of school. You basically got almost a 3/4 time job or to a full-time job.
And then now you've got a bit of an internship through school with the London Knights, which again is another kind of feather in your cap, but also a resume builder and a pretty cool spot to hang out and kind of get to know hockey, right?
Yeah, and I have no problem saying, like, for me, it's even, and we've talked a bit about this, like, it's still kind of pinched me that I'm in there with some of those guys and just hanging out, and that my opinion is kind of being voiced and whatnot. Like, I grew up watching that 04-05 team. I was 9 years old, 10 years old at that time when the whole world was watching because the NHL shut down, right? And it was Crosby versus London. They lost in the round robin, and then they go and kind of blank them there at home 4-0 to win the Memorial Cup for the first time, and the new arena and everything about it. So to me, it's crazy that I've even been given the opportunity to do it. But it's one of those kind of things, very full circle, just kind of growing up watching them. Like, all those players were my favorite players growing up. Your Bolins, your Prusts, your Brian Rodneys, like all these guys were. And I remember it was always about the stick, who had the coolest stick or whatever. But it's cool to be there now, and it's still a little bit surreal at times. Just trying to keep up and help out whatever.
What's it like, because I mean, I grew up in Sudbury, so we had the Sudbury Wolves, and I loved watching the Wolves, and kind of like you with the Knights. But what was it like going from basically being a fan? I know you're older now, but being a fan and being in the seats in the stands to now like walking into the coach's office and sitting down on the coach's couch and talking to the coaching staff. And what's that like, as a young man kind of who loves hockey, loves the whole process?
It's crazy. I feel very thankful just because I've had a lot of people that I feel like have prepared me as much as one could be. I still don't necessarily feel like I'm prepared. There's so much. I walk in there and you think you know everything, and then you're like, I know nothing. But I feel like the group around me really gave me every opportunity, like being around you and even just helping them with their physical testing. I've been around some of the guys just a little bit, whether I never even talked to them, but just you feel like you know them a little bit more. You kind of know their presence, kind of what maybe they expect, how things to be said and whatnot. So luckily I'd been around it a little bit, but it's crazy. I feel very thankful that I've been given the opportunity both by them, and the people have supported me enough that I've been able to kind of even get an internship opportunity with them. But now it's just trying to apply everything, all those experiences that I've learned when I feel that there's an opportunity to do so. And then the rest is just taking it all in, listening. Every time somebody asks you a question, really ask you, what are they asking you? Not just spitting out the first answer that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Not listening to the noise that's coming out of them, but actually listening to what they're asking and just trying to be as useful as possible.
No, it's great. And I think I want to go through this just really quick because I think this is important for any parent out there, any young kid who maybe is going to college or maybe even wants to just get in at 13, 14, 15 with an OHL team or with a junior B team. Like for you, what was the process that kind of got you in there? Now, I know with school, you have to find an internship. So you could have went to any team really, but obviously wanted to try to go to the biggest team in your market if you can, to do that. Well, what was the process there? Like for you, you kind of had a bit of an in, which I think is really important. But what was the process for you in order to get this and then actually get the opportunity to do it and get a bit of a role?
So yeah, like you said, a little bit of an in, which I was very thankful for. Rob Simpson, who's now the associate GM of the Knights. He was my minor range coach. And he was actually very kind enough. I don't know if it was last summer or the summer before, but his son was in one of our summer camps, and he just pulled me aside. And if you're ever looking for an internship or whatever, I know you're in school, or even if I wasn't in school, I think he said I could probably help you out with that. So I kind of always knew that was there. Going back to what I said about kind of experiences and whatnot, I don't like kicking tires on. I don't want somebody to take me with them just because I know them, or I don't want to ever feel like I'm owed anything. So I always wanted to really take it upon myself to make sure that I did everything I guess I could to make myself a good candidate, so that even if you strip the names off all the resumes that maybe got submitted for the internship that I got, that I was the best candidate. I wasn't just Wade Russell, the former minor midget player for Rob Simpson, but I was a good candidate. So I know that was kind of always my thought process as to getting into it. Just kind of supplying my resume, showing my body of work of everything that I've kind of tried to do so far. Luckily it went pretty smooth. I think it was a pretty easy application process that regard. There wasn't too many meetings or anything. I feel like I'm still on that time period where if you got to work hard, right? Like they're very honest people, and I respect that. So if I slip up in a way that isn't a good way, with whether it's work ethic or being lazy, not being on time and stuff, they'll definitely let me know about it. And I'm sure that it's thin ice, but I respect that, and I think that's the way it should be, especially with what the work that they're doing and everything. So
no, definitely. And I think so for any parents out there, I think if you sit down and let's say you want to get in with your son or daughter wants to get in with the local junior team or whatever it is, finding an in, like finding a connection, because dropping a resume off is great, but a lot of times it just goes by the wayside. So getting it in, even if you know somebody that knows somebody, or you have an ex-coach that's maybe involved, or a family friend, but calling on that. The other thing too is you got to make sure that, to your point about being a good candidate, you got to make sure that your son or daughter not necessarily is qualified, but has the work ethic to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning if they have to, or stayed at the rink till 12 o'clock after a game to finish up some game notes or whatever that is, right? Like you need a person, you got to put a person in place there if you're going to go vouch for them or you're going to try to get them in that's going to be able to do the work and that's responsible enough to take on the responsibilities that are going to come with it, And I think that's really important as well. And obviously Rob knew you well, and he knew that there's not going to be any issues there with that kind of stuff. But what an opportunity, like just to be able to put that on your resume that, hey, I worked with them for a couple months or the rest of the season and I've been around it. And obviously you got guys like Mark Hunter and Dale Hunter and Dylan Hunter and, Rick Stedman and Rob Simpson. And I mean, the list goes on, Macker, like Colin, all these guys that have played hockey. They've all played different levels of hockey, which is kind of cool too. You got NHLers to AHLers to college guys to whatever. But now you can kind of see, kind of a little bit of that recipe of what leads to success. And I chatted with this. I've been involved with them for a long time, so I know this. But I remember asking, like, they work hard, don't they? And you're like, yeah, like they're in there at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, all watching video, and they're there all day. And they have practice, and then they're after practice, they're meeting with guys, or they have something else going on, and it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, you're talking hockey, or making jokes, having a good time, but they're not good for just by accident. They're not good because they have a nice rink and they get a lot of fans. They're good because they work hard at being good.
100%. And it's really cool to be around. Like, and we were talking a little bit before, there isn't really a secret sauce. Like there's nothing that and again, I can't speak too much from experience. I've never been around another major junior team at this level, at least OHL. QMJHL,
but I mean, you've heard stuff, right? You can share, like, you don't have to say teams, but like, just the extra stuff. And
it's just the opportunity that they provide their players with. They give them every opportunity to kind of better themselves, whether it's with you as a skills coach, whether it's with Mitch, strength coach, or whether it's just doing video. Like the players can walk in any day and say, Dale, I want to go through breakouts or whatever. And they'll be there. They have packages that they're constantly putting together. And it's just, there's no secret sauce. It's constant. Even when they're not working, they're working. Like even when they are just kind of hanging out, talking shop, it's talking about London Knights, or it's talking about something that an NHL team did that they can maybe apply to their players. Like it's constantly, it's nonstop. I wouldn't say simple details, but it's specific details, but they're nonstop. Like when they watch film, it's the same points over and over. And it's that consistency that I think allows them to produce such good players, because they're not just giving kids opportunities. They're really giving them the habits they need to be successful at whatever level they go to play at. They're not just hell-bent on producing NHL players. They want players to go play in whatever avenue they feel free. They're huge on education and continuing that if that's what a player wants to pursue. So it's pretty interesting to see, and just learning every single day, just being there.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. And I think it obviously could lead to other things if depending on what you choose to do. And that's kind of one of the questions I kind of wanted to finish off with. But now that you've kind of had a fun, solid playing career, and I feel like anybody who plays minor hockey is awesome. Number one, that's great. And that's a lot of fun, friends, all that kind of stuff, good experiences. But if you go from minor hockey to junior, to me, like you've just climbed that pyramid a little bit. And there's a lot of players that'll never play junior or never had an opportunity to play junior. So you've kind of went up that pyramid a little bit more. You play junior B, you go up a little higher, junior A, college, whatever. But, and you said it earlier, like players start to fall off. They're maybe they get a job, or they get a girlfriend, or whatever that is. They're just not as interested in hockey anymore. So any level that you go up, you kind of narrow that pyramid down a little bit, right? Now that you've been on the other side of it a little bit, what would you like to do moving forward? Like if you could pick a bit of a dream job, and maybe you don't know yet, but are there different avenues that you like right now in hockey that you'd love to pursue as far as, making it maybe a bit of a career coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it almost changes every, not day, but it changes pretty sporadically. Like I have a bunch of ideas that float through my head. A big thing I'm pretty passionate about that I'd like to continue is working with coaches and just giving them the tools and the resources. Because at the end of the day, with Hockey Canada, there is a lot of really good stuff in place. Just the outreach is really hard. Like Canada's so big, it's hard for Hockey Canada to enact any of their policies, any of their guidelines, and truly kind of follow up on it, right? So kind of the idea, the buzzword, I don't know if somebody's got this, so no copyright or anything, but like coaches coaching coaches or something, like a little play on words, whatever, but just kind of really developing more coaches, and not that they need to go on a coach junior, but just having a really good set of house league coaches, and then having a really good set of a B level coaches, or double C in whatever little town, like just kind of giving them a little bit more resources. So for the level that they're at, they're running a really good program so that the kids are getting the most out of it. So whether there's upward movement for the kids that's available, or the kids just have a really good fun year of hockey and they stay healthy. So that's a big thing. On more of the traditional side, something in player development, whether that's skill, whether that's, the titles nowadays, I think, are coordinator of player development, director of player development and whatnot. I've always been interested in all the facets that kind of go into it, not just one in particular, but being kind of that person that kind of gets the first interface with the player, kind of assesses what their needs are specific to them, and then kind of setting them up with all those different kind of columns of player development, but really pushing them towards the ones that they probably need a little bit more than another player. And then you got player B, and then you're working with him, and he's maybe a little bit more on the other wing of it all. Yeah. But really just kind of tying that all together, especially when you hear it all in the news, how much the game's changing. I do think there's a little bit more of a personal element to it and personal development as much as there is player development. And quite frankly, coaches, and I totally get it, they don't, like we said, they're working hard, they're cutting film, they don't have the time to do that, to invest that into a player. So having that person that can kind of facilitate almost being a master of none, but being pretty good at a little bit of everything, then recommending to whoever is that kind of the expert in that area. So if a kid really needs to work on skill, they're going to Dwayne Blay. If they need to work on their sports psych a little bit, maybe they're going to Natasha Wesh. Yeah. But just kind of being that person that kind of facilitates that, I think is something that really kind of interests me a little bit.
And there's more and more of that. It's becoming more and more relevant at the high levels. Like you see a little bit in junior, not a ton, but a little bit. But at the AHL, the NHL level, that's, those roles are there. And if you're good at it and you can facilitate and you have, and I think one thing that we do lack in hockey on the skill development side or the development side is really having each player assessed individually. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just looking at how they play, getting to know them a little bit, and then putting together a bit of a plan on how to help them get to that next level. Some of them may never get to that next level, but there are some that, man, if they could tighten up section A and B, they got a good chance of playing at that next level. And like you said, whether that's A to AA or AAA or junior or whatever that is, I think it's huge. And I think at the junior level and beyond, so pro, there's more resources there financially and time-wise a little bit that you can have a role like that that's going to be relevant. Because at the end of the day, if you can help a kid come in at 16 and in his draft year gets drafted in the second or first round, there's money coming back from the NHL for that. You know what I mean? So if you can help a kid develop that maybe was off the draft list or was late rounds, all of a sudden he's jumped up to being a top round pick. That's you get a little bit of compensation for that, but there's value in that for the NHL team, but also for the junior team.
For sure. Yeah. Like the best thing about sports is it doesn't really operate like the way that kind of almost society does as a whole. It's like this little bubble that we all live in where we go to kind of get away from all the things. But at the same time, one of the worst things about sports is that's how it operates. When you look at it, like every other workplace, there's so much professional development that goes into people. Like teachers do workshops all the time. Like, so it's starting to come around now, and they might not have the same names as workshops or whatever, but like one-on-one skill sessions that a skills coach does with a player on the side, like all these things, like you're just investing in the players. You want to run a good business, you need a good team. From sporting perspective, if you want a good team, you need good players. If you want good players, they got to be good people. Like there's so many different layers that you can peel back to it. And I think it's really is starting to come around. And then just to kind of tie it all together, if anybody's listening that is starting to kind of look and transition from playing in sport to maybe working, the one thing I would say is keep building that resume. But a lot of the jobs that they're probably going to work in don't even exist yet. Like it's really kind of collectively changing. Like that director of player development, that's probably only, the last 5, 10 maybe years of where that's truly that title. Not only just a title, now it's actually a bit more of a responsibility.
Well, I think before it was just a title.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just
a former player and just kind of get them on payroll.
Where now it's an actual job.
Yeah.
And there's a description a bit there. You've got and even that though, like I think a lot of it is created not on the fly, but is created individually by that person in that position, if that makes sense, right? There's 100%. Not like really a cookie cutter way of doing it. And to your point, like I think a lot of times for young kids, just being creative, maybe you're really good on the computer, and you can develop something on Excel or some kind of a software that you could actually develop that would help track a player, that would help, like, because there is stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but some of it's cumbersome, some of it isn't good. It's not really specific, but there's a lot of different ways that any young player or ex-player or a young hockey enthusiast can go. And if you come to a team and say, hey, I've got something that might be of interest to you, you may be able to fill up, kind of put your finger in a hole in the boat and help them roll a little bit longer. And the other thing too that I want to make really important and clear is when you get to junior hockey and stuff like that, London's a bit of the exception, but there's not a lot of money there. There's not a lot of, opportunities to make really good money. Even, assistant coaches in the OHL don't make crazy money. So I think for anybody that's young and wants to get into it, you're going to have to probably work for free. Yep. Right. You're going to have to probably maybe work for some tickets or work for some hockey sticks or whatever. But being able to put the time in and the effort in at young ages, you don't have kids yet. You don't have a mortgage. You know what I mean? For you, it's like, I'm going to dedicate 20, 30 hours a week to this, which some people are like, oh, I can't do that. That's crazy. But man, if this is what you want, this is what you're passionate about, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And, that's how you're going to do it. And then all of a sudden, man, maybe there's an opportunity down the road to get picked up by somebody or, create a job somewhere or get a job offer somewhere, but you're going to have to put a little bit of time in to get that.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's this internship, I've only been there, I think coming on 2 weeks now, and it's worth its weight in value already. And I'm not making any money. I don't want to make any money from it. If they ask me to do more, I'd take on more. Like it's just, that's how much I'm learning. And it's not always direct things. Like it's not a definition of a stat that they're tracking. It's not always so much truly tangible things, but even just getting a feel for how an organization runs behind the scenes. All the things that, the GMs and the assistant GMs are dealing with, I never would have just thought. And now maybe at the NHL level, they don't because they have more resources and they can split it up. But the reality is at the major junior level, they don't have those resources. They don't have all those positions. So they're wearing a lot of different hats constantly, and they're still doing a darn good job in every single little sector that they're dealing with. So just learning those things, just being around, being a fly on the wall, like not even talking some days, but just listening, kind of picking everything up is huge, and just surrounding yourself with kind of those opportunities and those experiences.
Yeah. And I think, you're bang on. I think it is sometimes just cool just to you can go to a player or a parent right now after being there for 2 weeks, and the conversation you have with them is going to already be different than it would have been 2 weeks ago. Cause you're like, this is how it works. This is what happens, and when you get in those conversations behind the scenes on a real good player or maybe a mediocre player that they love, that's playing a lot better, you get better insight on what the coaches are thinking, what it takes, maybe they aren't looking for him to score 3 goals a game. All they want him to do is back check. So now you're talking to little Bobby the next day at a session. You're like, Bobby, all you gotta do is work hard, man. Just work hard, back check. Don't worry about scoring goals. I know you want to score goals, but coaches would rather you do this at the next level, and goals will come, but you get like crazy insight on a lot of those little things that you're like, man, this is cool. And at the end of the day, I think it makes you a better hockey person, right?
Yeah.
The more you learn, the better obviously you're going to get at what you're doing.
No, for sure. And it's incredible opportunity. And the nice part about internships is most companies, most teams, most organizations, they have offerings. And even if they don't, if you're willing to kind of come up with a proposal for them, they'll probably take you on. If somebody's going to offer to work for free, that's a pretty good opportunity for that business. And they'll take it on. Like if there's one thing that I've learned a lot from you and even continue with the Knights now and other opportunities is don't come to people with problems, come to them with solutions. Like you can be an incredible asset to whatever role you're in, whatever field, whatever industry. If you just come to somebody with, hey, I noticed that this is a problem for you guys, and here's what I think, could be done to kind of fix it or improve upon it or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of get your foot in the door. But just by recognizing that it's okay to kind of have those opportunities, that you don't need to come right out of your university degree and start working, a 6-figure job. That's not the reality for most people. That in the academic world, that's like thinking that you're going to the NHL, that you're just going to walk out of your degree and you're going to walk in the door. And some people do. And it changes from year to year, depending on the industries, but it's being willing to kind of really just work.
Yeah.
And for free at times. So,
and we've had interns here in our kind of small business and not looking to hire anybody. And we've hired a couple of them they've kind of created their own jobs, but they added a tremendous amount of value, helped kind of plug a couple holes that we had, and then ended up hiring them, and they were awesome and they did a really good job. Some of them moved on to other jobs, which is great. But I think, to your point about going out and seeking, basically giving a proposal to a team and saying, hey, I noticed you guys don't have a lot of fans in the stands, and I love being on a mic and I'd love to do your game ops.
Yep.
I was at a game the other day, and it was an AHL game, and the game ops were terrible. It was so bad. It was not entertaining at all. It was brutal. There was no fun in between whistles. There's no, it was awful. And that was the one thing I thought of. I'm like, man, someone's got to hire somebody here to do 100%. Game ops and make this a fun event. Look at basketball. There's every whistle, there's something going on. There's action going on. It's actually a pretty fun event. Even if you don't like basketball,
Absolutely.
The whole atmosphere of some of these stadiums and arenas are awesome. And so there's a lot of ways to plug holes, obviously, but for young people out there, just thinking of different ways that you can, and a good example of a team who's done it unbelievably well is Philadelphia with Gritty.
Yep.
And how crazy is that mascot? He's going to take on a life of his own. He's been unbelievable for raising the profile of mascots, number one, and then obviously raising a bit of the profile for Philly.
Yeah, and if you've seen, he's a little bit of hot water though.
Yeah.
Punching a kid or something.
I don't know. The other thing with Gritty is you hear he's trashing rooms, he's whatever. And so I don't know if this is, because it sounds a little fishy. He actually supposedly ran up and punched the kid in the back of the head, which
and an
maybe,
event and all kinds of stuff. But
yeah,
and with the way that they've been kind of marketing him, and to your point, is they've been marketing him as the Philly, the kind of blue collar, like rough
Yeah.
around the edges, get a little wild and rowdy at sporting events, probably more than the average kind of sports center or whatever. So I could very easily believe that it's a ploy, that they've just put something out to grab a little
Potentially,
bit more
right?
headlines or whatever,
Yeah.
just because that would fit the bill of whatever. But no, it's interesting case in sport marketing for him. And going back to all that, like if you're even just young, like 16, 15, like if you have an idea, just write it down. Like have a logbook of just all the crazy ideas that you have of, well, somebody did this, I think this should be done. Even if you don't necessarily at this point in time have the resources, then just have it. Like I wrote down an idea the other day, like there's a few different athlete management softwares.
Don't tell anybody.
I won't give too many details.
Okay.
But just like an athlete management software, and there's a couple different good bits and parts when you look at some of the softwares online, but there isn't one that a team could really take and have everything all in one. So that was an idea. I have no idea about coding. I have no idea about all the back end stuff that would need it, but it's just an idea that I have, like just kind of having those things in your back pocket. It's especially nowadays with all the technology and all the kind of avenues that you can go with it and all the channels that you can put yourself into to kind of talk and discuss with people. You don't just have to go door to door anymore. You can send an email on LinkedIn. You can DM. I was messaging somebody on Instagram, just asking how they started this thing. And
Yeah,
and
cool.
it's just, there's all these different ways to go about doing it now. So
Yeah.
write your ideas down, get out there, put yourself out there, get as much experience, and doesn't have to be high end experience. Just, it's got to be just some form, some base level experience, and just work hard, I guess. But
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think one of the underlying things is obviously having a bit of work ethic, right? Being able to show up on time, be where you need to be, work hard while you're there, and I'm not saying that's been lost or anything like that, but I think that's one of the main things that's going to keep a job for you, number one. And then being resourceful. There's nothing worse than somebody coming up to you and saying, hey, my phone doesn't work. Okay. Did you Google like why your phone doesn't work? Like, what, you want me to Google it for you? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it, but I can figure it out. And but like you said, coming with a solution, like, hey, this broke. I've already checked it online. It's $52 to replace. Are you good if I buy it? Yeah, 100% done. And I think that is huge, and not, not just being a schmuck who's always dumping crap on other people,
And the last thing, just to that point, is it's also all, like, I think work ethics is especially something that's learned. I think some kids have it a little bit more inherently, but it's all around you. Like, you surround yourself with people that work hard, recognize when they work hard, even if they ask a little bit more of you, and if they push you a little bit harder and maybe say this thing that you don't want to hear at certain times or whatever. But just being around those parents, those coaches, those peers, even, it's hard to accept that your peers work harder than you. Sometimes you want to surround yourself where you're like the one that stands out or whatever, but it's good to be around people that kind of, that push you and whatnot. And parents play a big role in kind of that, in that group, and kind of giving you a good support group and stuff. And so there's so much that goes into it, but just being surrounded by good people.
Oh, it's awesome, man. Listen, I really appreciate you coming by.
No, my pleasure.
We'll definitely be having you on another roundtable because you got a good set of pipes on. You got a good voice, and you got some good thoughts up in that ugly mush ears.
That's 8 years of school for you. So
Yeah.
2 more coming up. So
Right, boy. All right, thanks, buddy.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.